Hello and welcome to Janette's TV. I'm your host, Janette Burke. Today I have with me a veteran broadcaster. Her name is Pat Lynch. She's the CEO and founder of Women's Radio. And I recently had the pleasure of being interviewed by her for her show, Women's Radio. Now, she has a great story about women and having a voice for women that actually dates back to 1987. And I'm going to let her tell us a little bit more about it. But I want to welcome to my show now, Pat Lynch. Welcome.
Hi, Janette. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. I'm glad to have you here. So it's a real honor to have the opportunity to actually interview, being that you're such a veteran and trailblazer in the whole, media broadcast industry. And I'd really love for you to share with my audience just how the whole women's radio talk came about and your experiences leading up to it.
Well, I did start out pretty early at the age of 25, beginning my own advertising and PR firm. Because of that, I really dug in and learned everything I could learn about media. I was really lucky to have a great teacher, and I noticed that I began to focus on using radio and TV more than a lot of the other media. And I really, really enjoyed radio. It's very versatile. You can do some very creative things with it. And both media are great. Every single medium has its special qualities. But as I marched through life changes, and I went through something called the dark night of the soul. And I really, really wanted to find what was my purpose for being here? What was my mission? And I believe that every person has one. Well, I asked and asked, but I was in my 50s before I got that answer. And eventually, I literally heard my inner voice say that I should give women a greater voice, and that there was a reason for this. We're coming into a time when women have more authority, where they are doing more things, and they need to learn to speak up and to speak from their heart and to speak with authority. So my task was to help give them a voice over a broader geographic area using the technology that existed, whatever that might be, to give them a bigger voice. And so that has been my mission all the rest of my time.
So take us back to 1987 and when you began having women's radio, and I know it's morphed over the years, but when it first got going, I believe you had shared with me that it was started on satellite, and there's a whole story around it with this a woman from Los Angeles area. Can you please share with my audience that whole story about how it came to light and some of the challenges you faced along the way?
Well, when I was given this mission, as it were, I began to look for people that I thought were very good in radio broadcasting. I found one gentleman who worked for KCBS in San Francisco and another who worked for PBS, both who had tremendous backgrounds and experience. And their suggestion was that somehow I managed to find a sponsor, find a host with some experience in an area that fit the area description that was most wanted by women, which is health, by the way. And I was lucky enough to find an existing host, a woman doctor in Santa Cruz. So then we had to figure out, I was lucky, I got a sponsor. And the doctor that we recruited said yes, and she was willing to go through the learning curve, and it was a learning curve. So we bought a very expensive and heavy, I might add, Comrex machine, which was all that we could do at that time. We didn't have the technology that exists today. So we bought a Comrex machine, got a very good microphone, headsets. We installed what's called an ISDN line in her house that linked to the upload, which was in Boston, Massachusetts. And then we used the system. I just tell people we used chewing gum and Scotch tape to do the rest. So we were patched in with telephone lines between San Francisco, Marin County, and Oakland, California, together with the host in Santa Cruz, and the uplink and the telephone lines in Boston. And that was a very interesting trip, but it worked perfectly. So she did a live program every night, 5 days a week. We did what's called seeding the audience. We had people across the country call in with good questions, and it really began the flow. And just very, very quickly, it took off. And then during the daytime, I would spend my time getting up very early in the morning and calling radio stations across the country, starting in the East Coast, going to the West Coast. And in 30 days, we had 35 affiliates, and we were on course with 2 major companies for sponsors. And on the next day, Congress, in their infinite wisdom, passed the 1996 Telecommunications Act, and all the doors closed. So then we went through another learning curve. We actually thought about buying a radio station. The short version of that is that no one was willing to sell us one or even lease us one, because they were still going through this buying and selling frenzy. So after a total of 3 years of all this experimenting, we finally looked and saw that the web was the only open door. I knew nothing about being on the web. In fact, at the very same time that I started, Women's Wire was just starting, and it started as what's called a bulletin board service, a BBS. And they didn't have pictures or words or anything. So it was really fundamental in the very beginning. And that, by the time we got to that point, it was 1998. So our very first website went up in 1998. We used volunteers to get that done. And streaming then was in its absolute infancy. And the only way we could afford to do that is I cajoled my husband, who had gone to a meeting at Microsoft, to get in touch with Steve Ballmer, who agreed to help us. And we got a lot of software and streaming credits, which made it possible for us to get women's radio off the ground, finally. And we've been streaming ever since.
That's an incredible story. And women's radio has been going now since 1998. That's a long time.
Right.
What are some of the, biggest changes you've seen hit the industry, and how were you able to incorporate that into women's talk radio?
Well, it's interesting. I came along at a time in my life when radio was a very big medium. If you think about, like, when I was born, that's when Roosevelt was giving his fireside chats, and people sat around the radio, and people invited other people in their homes to listen to those fireside chats. So that's in my memory bank. As I grew older and got into advertising so early, I noticed that the people who owned radio stations largely, except for maybe New York and New Jersey, although it probably started the same way everywhere, is that general contractors, people who built roads and houses, etc., would gain income or wealth, and then they'd want to buy something that they could control. I think that's the best way to say it. Mm-hmm. So they began to notice that they could buy radio stations, and they thought that was a lot of fun, that they could get on and get their friends on. And especially in the South, that's how radio really moved along. So then it was all about the Good Old Boys Club. And there were no women in radio. And the few who tried just didn't, you just don't hear about that very often in terms of women's history. But it was part of women's history because it really is a women's medium. And because women are very verbal, they do want to connect and chat. They do want to do it over large areas. So by the time we came along, I guess you might say, FM had taken over AM, cable had taken over that, And so all the media was evolving. New media was coming out, and the old media was not going away. It was changing. And still, women couldn't find a place in all of that. So I think that, in a sense, that's...
So how has the internet helped women find a place? Because
Oh, wow.
I mean, your show is on the internet like mine. How has it helped women find a place? How has it given rise to women's voices?
Well, in the year that we started, 1998, when I started that, there were only 3% women to men on the web. And in 1 year, and largely I have to say it's because of AOL, and a woman at AOL who persisted, that they began to use her ideas to put out the CDs and that had the link on it to sign up for AOL and get mail. So women were, especially women's organizations, which really house a large number of women leaders, were having difficulty because the postal rates were going up. So one woman took another woman by the hand and said, look at this. We could all get email for free, and you would not have to pay the postal rates anymore.
So they a huge difference, you know.
It made a huge difference, so big that in 1 year, it went from 3% to 45% women to men on the web. And so women came on in greater and greater numbers, and probably, I don't even know the stats right now, but I'm pretty sure that women outrank men in terms of numbers.
So let's talk now a little bit about women's talk radio, because it has, you know, morphed from the original way you started it with the doctor and the 5 days a week live broadcast. Now, who do you feature and what do you look for in guests?
Well, in guests, I have a lot of latitude myself, but I look for women who represent the audience that we have gone after. We determined, as you should in media, that you can't be all things to all people. It just does not work out. And the content you do use, that draws your audience. It's always that way. Men used to say content is king. Whereas I say content is queen.
Yeah, so do I. Yeah. So what do you look for in a guest, and like what topics are now featured on women's talk radio?
Well, I don't have all the topics I'd like, by the way. As I mentioned, at the top of the list is health. Health is the number one issue that women have across the country, in almost every country around the world. It is the biggest issue. Their health, their family's health, the health of their communities, et cetera, et cetera. I think a lot of
in COVID too, right? So
exactly. And they have always been the caretakers. So they take care of things at work, and they take care of their families. Often they're taking care sometimes of their grandchildren, sometimes of their parents, et cetera. And they make everything continue to be healthy.
So would you say the target demographic for women's talk radio is 45-ish to 60, or?
We target women who are 40 to 65, and that's a kind of a niche demographic.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, and these are also the age group of the women who have now either gone into business, or they're leaders in corporations, or they're leaders in not-for-profits, governmental agencies, or educational institutions, and that's our target audience. So we look for guests who are reflective of that and whose content falls into one of our content areas.
And how does one go about becoming a guest on your shows, or a process?
We have several processes, but one is directly online. Anyone who wants to be a host now can apply directly online. Anyone who wants to be a guest can apply. So there are ways for people to get in touch with us directly.
There's an opportunity for you to have hosts on Women Talk. So if somebody's looking to be a host, have their own show, reach a demographic of 45 to or 40 to 65 in the government, business, health, leadership type of realms, they could apply to be a host or a guest. And you can do this online just by going to www.womenstalkradio.com. And there's an intake form then, basically, to apply.
There is. There's like a form that people can fill out, and you have to do that to become a host. We also, along with having womensradio.com, we also produce a tool that people can use called Audio Acrobat, and that actually powers Women's Radio. So we do ask that people use that tool. But other than that, we also don't have hosting fees. So it's a really, really good way, I feel, to allow women to come in and begin to have that voice and to learn how to do the things you do so well.
Well, thank you. So we're going to get to your giveaway in a minute, but before we do that, I also wanted to get your take on some of the other industry changes. I mean, we talked about internet taking over, and it's a powerful streaming tool. It's probably going to get bigger. It's going to morph and change yet again in probably the next few years.
Yes, probably.
What do you see coming for the future of broadcasting, of media, of radio, of streaming?
Well, I think it's already taking place. I'm eager to get right in the middle of it. And I think that is to allow people or provide ways for people to have greater distribution of their content and greater visibility over many, many platforms. Mm-hmm. So that is, in a nutshell, called distribution and syndication. And that's something that we're working on right now.
Right, that's a big proponent. Do you ever find, though, because, the consumer who is basically streaming or even watching still regular TV or maybe a bit of both, do you find that they maybe have too much choice? There's too much available content. And if so, how would that impact TV?
I love this question, Janette, because several people have brought this up lately. And I think that people that are in the industry who have been in some media over a longer period of time realize the media doesn't go away. We just get more and more and more. And for instance, like Netflix was just providing movies from other people. Now they're making movies, and they're making it in a wide variety of genres.
Yes, so, and they're kind of outdoing Hollywood at the moment.
Yes, although I'm not sure that anybody's actually able to film right now, but they are really pumping out.
Back in California to filming. But that being said, though, it is quite amazing what Netflix was able to accomplish in just a few short years with a new way of offering content through subscription. What I find really amazing about Netflix is it didn't start out so well for them, but now it's taken off. It's doing phenomenally well. And what we have too today, and I think this is kind of worth mentioning, is that we also, at the same time that we have all this advancement and progression and the availability to streamline and get more and more content, we also have outbreak channels, specialty channels. We have a movement even back to the 1950s style way of consuming content, in that, across Canada, the US, drive-ins were being open to respect social distancing, and, people were having resurgence of the drive-in. And, that was kind of a dead industry that's come back because of COVID. And then also we have in certain provinces, and I'm sure like you have in certain states, because I think some of the states are already ahead of us, like beyond stage 1 or 2 of the reopening of the economy, movie theaters coming back with social distancing practices. But yet, even though they're coming back, there isn't a lot out of Hollywood for them to show. So they're either going to show old movies again, like they're doing at the drive-in, or they're going to have a limited amount of releases for 2020 and 2021, because Hollywood is just going back into production, and not everything is fully back into production. So how do you see that affecting, like, that segment of the media? Not, bringing back the old and the new, and maybe having to not have enough new content to put out in terms of new movies and that sort of thing, aside from Netflix that seems to have it, all the new stuff. Go ahead.
Well, here comes a whole bunch of new people,
Yes,
such as yourself,
mm-hmm.
who have other content, new content, and a lot of creativity is going on that maybe is under the surface that we don't see every day, but it is rising. Some of this is in the form of 3D animation that a lot of people are doing, and then taking on social justice issues and making them interesting. So they're using cartoons and many, many other things. And then they're using new media, such as you're doing, to put this information out to a larger number of people. I want to go back to the question that you asked too about, don't you think there's going to be too much content?
Yeah.
No, I don't think there's too much content. I think it's going to be make more content that is available allows us to make better choices. And it allows us, just like if the version of Montessori is put a child in the middle of a lot of resources and then trust the child to pick what it needs for its destiny, basically. And I think that the content that we're going to be exposed to is going to be much like that. And I've noticed there's a plethora of new content, even on Netflix. I just finished watching the whole series, The Story of Buddha. I mean,
oh, really? Yeah.
When in America have you seen a whole series on a character that lived 2,500 years ago in some other country, right? Mm-hmm. So these things are going to progress, and we're going to have more and more opportunities to get deeper and deeper into the things that we love, that we're more drawn to. And it's easy to get stats through these media.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I also think that, podcasts are growing too, which is sort of the radio element of it. But for sure, the webcast and the TV stuff is definitely getting more creative, more in depth. And yeah, there's a lot to choose from based on our interests.
I want to compliment you on all the work that you do to help women.
Thank you.
And the great training that you provide. I frankly don't know other people who get into the details that you do. And I believe, Janette, that there are going to be more and more women who, especially women in business, who will realize the value of being on screen and will take advantage more and more of the opportunities that come to them, just like the ones you offer, to have that available. Just like it's been when I started, and that's been 22 years ago, or 23, I lose count. At any rate, it was hard enough just to get people on the radio. Mm-hmm. But now people are, and women in particular, feel more comfortable being on the radio. Now they're moving into being on screen, the very things you're doing. And you're giving women the kind of help they need so they can feel comfortable doing that and being a good guest on TV.
Thanks. Yeah. So, I mean, a big part of what I'm doing beside the interview aspect is actually preparing people to be on camera first and getting their story and their message down and that sort of thing. And yeah, I do think that that's going to be become bigger and bigger because especially with COVID and no vaccine out yet, many of us have nothing but a camera to get business with, like the making the video aspect or the interviewing aspect, pod or webcast, is an opportunity for you to showcase yourself to prospective clients or even existing clients, staff, investors, sponsors, and give them an up close and personal.
In many ways, it's an advantage because before we had to fly places. If you really wanted to get someone's attention, you had to fly to someplace, make a meeting, stay overnight, eat out. It's expensive to do those things.
Yes, it is. So the thing is, the camera is providing opportunity while staying at home, and not just for the media aspect, the pod, the webcasts, or regular media shows, which are also filming on Zoom now, but also for speaking, virtual speaking. So I think the camera is going to become a bigger part of all our lives. I agree with you on that. And I thank you for your compliment. And before we close off, I do want to mention the fact that you have this incredible giveaway for my viewers, exclusively for the viewers of Janette's TV today. And I really would like you to explain it, because I'm sure you'll do it better justice than I will. And then, of course, all the details will be listed in the description and below. We'll share the links, and it'll be in the tags as well. So go ahead, please, Pat, and tell us about this awesome giveaway that you have going on for my viewers to claim.
Thank you. And I feel real privileged that you would ask. And so what I've put together is a program that we want to do live. And we set a date for that, Monday, July the 27th, I believe it is.
Monday, July 27th.
2 o'clock West Coast time, that would be 6 o'clock East Coast time. And I hope that that's a good day and a good time for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And maybe you have to have dinner a little bit early, but that's okay. Or you have it a little bit late.
You can make that happen, yeah.
But I'm going to be giving a lot of the things that I've learned over the course of starting women's radio, things that are tips and helps, how to get a list of media together, how to use that list, how to find people that you can write to and say, I'd like to be a guest on your program, how to do that well, things that you can do that are going to enhance that experience. And then a lot of women in particular, I'm probably not the shining example, have not overcome verbal props. Things like, and there's really a little list of things. We talk like that, but we really shouldn't talk like that. And we should learn not to do that if we're a guest in particular. So many, many women are still looking just to get their feet wet. Doing this in radio is one of those ways. So I want to give a lot of help to encourage women to do this, do the preparation they need in front, tell them how they can influence hosts and producers of radio across the country and in many countries, needless to say at this point. There just seem to be no
So just to reiterate, this is an online training on Monday, July 27th. It's Eastern time, 3 p.m. Sorry, Eastern time, 6 p.m. Pacific time, 3 p.m.
Right.
And you can register with the link that we will provide. And again, it'll be shown here, but it will also be shown in the description. We'll share the links. And you'll receive, I think this is a Zoom link type of training.
Yes, I think that we chose to use Skype in this case.
Oh, Skype, okay.
Limiting
and it's a great opportunity to really learn how to compile a targeted media contact list and approach various aspects of, well, in this case, radio and TV, or more radio and podcast producers to be on their show, and how to approach it professionally with a proper, what we call in the industry, a pitch letter, media pitch letter. So Pat, who's a veteran, as I mentioned, in this industry, a great woman to learn from. And so if you're interested, follow the link and go ahead and register for the course. I'm sure you'll get a lot out of it. And Pat, where can we find you directly? So I need, first of all, let's mention the Women's Talk Radio website again, which is www.womenstalkradio.com.
Let me interrupt. It's womensradio.com. There are no...
sorry. Go ahead then. Say it.
Just womensradio.com.
Womensradio.com. Okay. That's the website. Again, if you want to apply to be a guest or a host. And if you want to see more information about the course, we're also going to share the link. Womensradio.com. And Pat, how else can we get in touch with you? Could you please share your email and your telephone number?
Certainly. So if you want to reach me directly using email, you can send it to team, T-E-A-M, like a football team, at women, W-O-M-E-N, hyphen, corp, C-O-R-P.com. And you can call me directly if you wish to, 775 219-0014. You can obviously go to Women's Radio, and a number of my programs are right at the top, so you can learn a little bit about the style of the programs that I do. Not everybody does the same thing. We have other hosts, and you could also apply to them to be a guest if you wish to, but you can apply directly online. If you're really interested to jump deeper in the soup and want to know more about me, there is a biography under each one of the broadcasts that I do. So,
okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today and relaying this really great information, and also providing the opportunity to host this course and have my viewers join. It's a special offer for my viewers. Did we mention the price of the course?
No, thank you. So this is valued at approximately $300 for the time and the material that you'll receive. So, but of course, it's going to be free to all of your viewers, Janette, and I hope that people take advantage of it.
Okay, so I'm just going to reiterate this before I really close off the show today. So it's a $300 value for my viewers who are looking to have a course on how to approach media, particularly radio, and compile a radio or podcast media list with an exact pitch for you to get some exposure on their shows. Pat's running a course. It's July 27th. And
You're invited too, Janette.
Pardon?
You're invited too.
Oh, I wouldn't miss it for the world. So it's July 27th, 3 p.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. Eastern time. Grab an early dinner. And I just want to mention again that out of her kind generosity, she is offering this to my audience who's watching today to have this $300 value course completely complimentary. And there is a link below to sign up to get on this course. So I'll be there. I look forward to seeing you there as well. Thank you again, Pat, for sharing this time with us today. And to my lovely audience, thank you for sharing your time with us today. This is Janette Burke, your host, signing off. Please remember to like, comment, and share all our posts. You will find us all over the net on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Pinterest, Vimeo, YouTube, Instagram, and so many other places. Hashtag Janette's TV. And until next time, continue to be fabulous.